Rose woke up in the middle of the night, her heart racing, sweat dripping down her face. The dream was still vivid in her mind. The massive cow charging at her, knocking her to the ground, and the blood, the pain. It all felt so real. But as she lay there, painting and trying to calm her breathing, she realized something horrifying. The blood. It was real. She gasped, her hands shaking as she reached down to feel the wetness between her legs. Her body went cold, and panic surged through her veins. No, not again. It couldn't be happening again. Rose? Peter stared beside her, groggily waking up to the sound of her distress. He looked at her with concern in his eyes. What's wrong? Tears filled Rose's eyes as she struggled to speak. Peter, it's happening again. I'm bleeding. Peter's eyes widened with shock, but he didn't waste a moment. He sat up quickly and rushed to her side, his voice filled with panic. Oh no, Rose. Please let me get you to the hospital. We need to go now. Rose cried out in fear as Peter helped her, her mind spiraling into confusion. How could this be happening? How could she have lost another baby? She had been so careful. And now, just like the first time, everything was slipping away from her. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed what Rose already feared. The pregnancy was lost. It was the same diagnosis as before, the same heartbreak, the same emptiness. Rose sat there numb as the doctors explained what had happened. But the words didn't make sense to her anymore. It was as though her mind couldn't process it. Peter sat beside her, holding her tightly, but he too was in shock. He didn't know how much they could take. They had already been through this once, and now it was happening again. The second miscarriage, the third, the fourth. It was like a cruel cycle they couldn't escape. As the years passed, the same tragic pattern repeated itself. Rose would get pregnant, and just when they began to dream of a future with their child, the miscarriage would occur. Over a span of 5 years, they experienced 10 miscarriages. Each time, it felt like a crushing blow, but chipped away at their hearts, their hopes, and their spirits. The pain was unbearable. Each time they tried to pick up the pieces to heal, but the wounds never fully closed. Rose cried herself to sleep most nights, her heart shattered by the loss of her children, while Peter became distant, unable to handle the constant pain. It seemed like every time they got their hopes up, something came along to take it all away. After yet another miscarriage, Rose sat in silence, staring at the walls of their home, her heart breaking with every passing minute. The years of pain, the repeated losses had worn her down. She felt as if her spirit had been completely drained, leaving nothing but an empty shell of the person she once was. The thought of trying again, only to face the same devastating result, felt like too much to bear. Peter sat beside her, his expression filled with sorrow and helplessness. He had everything, every doctor, every treatment, every form of hope, and still nothing had worked. The losses were taking their toll on him too. He could see the pain in Rose's eyes, and it crushed him every single time he saw her suffer. But this time, he couldn't bear to see her so broken. He knew something needed to change. Rose, Peter finally spoke, his voice tired but determined. We've been through so much already. Or maybe it's time we seek something beyond what we can see. Maybe it's time we turn to faith, real faith. We need something greater than us. I think we should see a pastor, get some prayer, some spiritual guidance. This has gone beyond human control. Rose looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and doubt. Peter, you think prayers will change anything? After everything we've been through, what difference will that make? Peter took her hand in his grip tight with a blend of sadness and conviction. I believe it will, Rose. I know you're tired, but sometimes when things are beyond your control, we need to surrender to God and trust that He can heal us, restore us, and show us the way. Please let's try for us, for our future. Rose didn't say anything right away. She closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. For the first time in years, a tiny spark of hope flickered inside of her. Maybe, just maybe, they needed to put their faith in something bigger than themselves. I'm willing to try, she whispered, but I don't know if I believe it will work. Later that day, Rose called her friend Naomi. She needed someone to talk to, someone who might understand her. Naomi had always been there for her, and now Rose needed her advice more than ever. Naomi, I don't know what to do anymore, Rose said, her voice cracking with emotion. Peter and I, we've decided to see a pastor. We're going to get prayers, maybe some guidance. I don't know if it will work, but we have to try something. I don't think we can keep going on like this. Naomi was silent for a moment, as if processing the news. Then her voice came through, feigning concern, but carrying a trace of something else. Something hard to pinpoint. Rose, I'm so sorry to hear that. I know how much you've been through. You know, I've heard a lot about pastors who can help with situations like yours. I can suggest a few churches for you to visit. They've done incredible things for people facing similar struggles. I've even seen people have breakthroughs when they went in for prayers. One church I know, Pastor Obinas, has a powerful healing ministry. I've heard many testimonies of couples who have been through what you're going through and they were able to conceive after his prayers. There is another one, even Pastor Emeka's church, that also has a powerful deliverance service. I'm sure one of them could help. Rose, desperate for any solution, decided to give it a shot. Naomi's suggestion sounded promising, though something in her gut still felt off about Naomi's enthusiasm. But at this point, Rose couldn't afford to be too suspicious. She needed help, and if Aunt Naomi believed in these pastors, maybe they could make a difference. Thanks, Naomi. I'll look into them. Peter and I are going to visit Pastor Bina's church first. I hope we find something that can give us a chance at the future. Peter had to leave town for a business trip that was scheduled weeks in advance, and Rose was left behind, feeling both lost and desperate. She had hoped that his presence would bring some stability, but now with him gone, she felt more alone than ever. The weight of her struggles was too much to carry on her own. Naomi, sensing an opportunity, called Rose and offered to go with her to church that Sunday. I know Peter is not here, but I'll go with you. Rose, you shouldn't have to go through this alone. Let me be here for you. Rose hesitated for a moment, but she welcomed Naomi's offer. She didn't want to go by herself, not with everything that had happened. She needed a friend by her side. They went to Pastor Obina's church as Naomi had suggested, and the experience was nothing like Rose had imagined. The pastor's charisma was undeniable, and the congregation was filled with people fervently praying for their breakthroughs. But when it was Rose and Naomi's turn for prayer, Pastor Obina's attitude took a sharp turn. The pastor looked at them both and said, God is powerful, but he requires a sacrifice for a blessing like yours. A blessing this great cannot come without cost. Rose, feeling a little confused, asked, What do you mean? The pastor smiled warmly, but then added, For you to receive your miracle, for you to carry your own child, you need to sow a seed into God's work. It's the price of your breakthrough. The cost is high, but the rewards are even higher. Rose's heart sank as Pastor Obina continued, his voice steady and persuasive. A donation of $10,000 will open the gates of heaven for you. Only then will you receive the full blessing you seek. This is not just any offering, it's a divine investment in your future. Rose's stomach twisted with discomfort, but Naomi quickly turned to her, whispering, This is what it takes, Rose. This is your chance. We have to do it, though. The person knows what he's doing. Trust me, we will find a way. Rose was stunned. She had never heard of a pastor asking for such a large sum, especially in dollars. But Naomi's words pushed her forward. Reluctantly, Rose agreed to the donation, though her heart felt uneasy. But nothing changed. After the prayer, after the money was given, Rose went home with a false sense of hope, only to face the same heartbreaking reality days later. She lost another pregnancy. It was the same cycle, repeating itself like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The next few months were filled with more visits to other pastors and churches that Naomi recommended. They all promised breakthroughs. All assured Rose that if she prayed with enough faith and gave enough money, God would answer. But it was always the same story. High promises, high donations, and no results. Rose's faith began to shake, and the weight of it all pressed down harder than ever. One hot afternoon, feeling like she was suffocating in the weight of her own thoughts, Rose decided to step outside for some fresh air. The world around her seemed indifferent to her pain, but the streets offered some sort of escape, even if temporary. She walked down her street, her steps slow and deliberate as she tried to clear her mind. As she walked, something caught her attention. From down the road, she heard the sound of singing and fervent prayer. The voices filled the air, drawing her in with an undeniable pull. She turned the corner, following the sound until she came across a small building, a community center of sorts. Through the open door, Rose could see a group of people gathered, sitting on the floor, their heads bowed in prayer. There was no grandeur, no flashy signs or large offerings, just a simple group of people praying with sincere hearts. Rose stopped for a moment, unsure of what to do. She could feel the draw, the need to be part of this moment. There was something real, something genuine about this gathering. With a deep breath, she stepped inside. The leader of the group, an elderly woman with kind eyes, looked up as Rose entered. "Come, child," the woman said, her voice warm and welcoming. "Join us in prayer. God is here." She stayed for the entire praying section, not knowing what would come next, but feeling lighter than she had in years. For the first time, Rose felt hope, not from the promises of pastors who had taken her money, but from a group of people who simply believed. 3 months after Rose had joined the small prayer group down the street, something miraculous happened. She found out she was pregnant again. The joy that flooded her heart was indescribable. For the first time in years, she dared to believe that this could be the one. The pregnancy wasn't just a medical condition, it felt like a blessing. It felt like God had finally answered her prayers, and the weight that had been suffocating her for so long seemed to lift. She couldn't wait to tell Peter, but before doing so, she wanted to visit the prayer group leader, the elderly woman who had welcomed her with open arms. That Sunday afternoon, Rose made her way back to the small building, her heart racing with excitement. The woman who led the group, Pastor Deborah, greeted her warmly when she arrived. "I'm pregnant, Pastor," Rose said, her voice filled with hope and gratitude. "I can't even believe it. I'm pregnant again, and I think the prayers are working. I wanted to thank you for everything. I feel like this time is different." Pastor Deborah smiled softly, her eyes filled with kindness. "Praise God, Rose. This is the beginning of your miracle. But remember, the journey has just started. You must keep your faith strong, and the Lord will carry you through." Pastor Deborah's expression grew more serious, as if she sensed something important. "I want to give you special prayers to recite every night. These prayers will keep your pregnancy safe and protected. Say them with faith and trust that God is with you every step of the way." Rose felt a deep sense of relief. This was exactly what she needed, something to hold on to. Pastor Deborah handed her a small folded piece of paper with the prayers written on it. "Say this every night before you sleep," Pastor Deborah instructed. Rose thanked Pastor Deborah and promised to keep up with the prayers. She left the building feeling lighter than she had in years. A week had passed since Rose began reciting the special prayers every night, and though part of her was still filled with doubt, there was a growing sense of peace in her heart. But that evening, as they sat together at Rose's place, enjoying a drink and talking about everything and nothing, when Rose went to visit Naomi, Rose felt it was finally time. Naomi had been there for her through all the heartbreaks, through every loss, and now it felt right to share her good news. "Naomi," Rose said, her voice trembling, slightly with excitement, "I need to tell you something." Naomi looked up from her drink, her eyes immediately lighting up with interest. "What is it, girl? You look like you're about to burst." Rose took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I'm pregnant again. I just found out a week ago, and I really believe this time will be different. I've been going to a prayer group. Remember the one I told you about, and they gave me these special prayers to say every night. I've been saying them, and I really feel like it's working." Naomi's eyes widened, and she quickly put on a grin, masking the jealousy that flickered behind her eyes. "Oh, wow, Rose, that's amazing," Naomi said, her voice thick with excitement, though there was an unmistakable edge to it. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve this." Rose felt a momentary flash of doubt as Naomi faked her usual excitement, but she pushed it aside, too eager to embrace her joy. Thank you, Naomi. I just really feel like this time it's different. Naomi nodded quickly, but there was something off about her smile. After finishing the prayers that evening, she went to bed, her heart finally at ease. But not that night. As she drifted into sleep, a familiar darkness crept into her dreams. In the dream, Rose found herself back in the same desolate field, the one she had seen so many times before. She could feel the ground beneath her feet uneven and rough. Her heart began to race as she heard the unmistakable sound, the deep, menacing growl of the cow. She turned and there it was again, the enormous cow, charging at her with wild eyes and a speed that sent a chill through her bones. As always, Rose started to run, her legs moving quickly as she tried to escape. But this time, something felt different. As she ran, she saw a road ahead of her, a wide asphalt path that cut through the field. The cow was still chasing her, and she could hear its hoofs pounding behind her, closer and closer. Rose reached the road, her breath heavy, her heart racing as she sprinted across it. But just as she crossed, she heard the roar of an engine, something massive, moving fast. She looked up and froze. A truck, speeding down the road at high velocity, was heading straight for the cow. The cow charged forward, unaware, and in an instant, the truck collided with the beast, the impact deafening. The truck struck the cow so forcefully that it sent the animal flying through the air, its body twisting unnaturally before hitting the ground. Rose stood there breathless, her eyes wide with disbelief. The cow's body lay lifeless on the ground, its head completely severed, a horrific sight. The road was now eerily quiet, the cow's blood staining the pavement as the truck sped off into the distance, leaving behind nothing but silence. Rose woke up with a start, her heart pounding, her body drenched in sweat. The dream had been so real, so vivid, just like the others, but this time there was something different. The cow, the source of all her pain, had been destroyed. It had been hit by the truck, and its reign of terror had come to an end. Rose lay there in the quiet of her bedroom, trying to process the dream. She felt shaken but also strangely relieved. The dream was unlike any of the others. This time the cow was defeated, destroyed, and Rose couldn't help but feel that it was a sign. 2 days later, Rose went about her day, still thinking about the strange dream she had experienced. The image of the cow being struck down by the truck haunted her, but it also gave her a strange sense of peace. Maybe it was a sign, she thought to herself. Meanwhile, Naomi was on her way to work that morning, her usual energy bubbling under the surface as she drove through the busy streets. She had been up early, rushing to get everything done for her day. Her mind was occupied, and as usual, but today there was a faint unease, something she couldn't quite shake, like a dark cloud hovering just out of reach. She tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the road ahead. As Naomi drove along the highway, her thoughts drifted back to Rosie's pregnancy. She had been pretending to be excited for her friend, but deep down, the jealousy had only grown. Rose had something Naomi wanted, something she felt she had been robbed of. As she thought, lingered, Naomi's eyes darted to the rear-view mirror, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. Without warning, Naomi's car swerved to avoid a pothole in the road, and in that split second, everything changed. She lost control of the vehicle. Before she could react, Naomi's car veered sharply, sliding across the slick road. The screeching of tires echoed in the air as the car spun out of control, heading straight for an oncoming truck. The horn of the truck blared just as Naomi's car collided head-on with a massive vehicle. The force of the crash was deafening. In that instant, time seemed to stop. The impact was horrific, and Naomi's vehicle was crushed in an instant. The truck collided with the side of the car, crumpling it like a thin can. Naomi's body was thrown violently inside, her head slamming against the steering wheel. The sound of metal twisting and breaking filled the air as the truck skidded to a halt. But Naomi's car was left in a mangled mess, pinned against the massive truck. The aftermath of the accident was nothing short of catastrophic. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, but when they reached Naomi's car, it was clear that the damage was severe. It took them over an hour to carefully extract her from the wreckage, but by the time they did, Naomi had already passed away. The news of the accident sent shockwaves through everyone who knew her. Rose, still unaware of the horrific events unfolding, went about her morning routine, her thoughts on the prayers she had been saying every night. She hadn't heard from Naomi in a while, but she hadn't touched much of it. They hadn't spoken since their last meeting when Rose had told her about her pregnancy. That is until her phone rang. Hello, madam, Rose answered, a frown creeping across her face as she looked at the caller ID. Is this Mrs. Rose Olatunji? A voice on the other end asked, a hint of unease in the tone. Yes, this is Rose. What is wrong? I'm afraid I have some terrible news. The voice continued, and Rose's stomach dropped. There's been an accident. Naomi, she has been involved in a car crash. She didn't make it. Rose's blood ran cold. What? What do you mean? No, it can't be true. Are you sure? The voice on the other end confirmed, and it felt like the world had just tilted on its axis. Rose's legs gave way, and she had to grab the kitchen counter to steady herself. The grief hit her all at once. Naomi, dead? It couldn't be. It didn't make any sense. Just 2 days ago, they were sitting together, laughing and talking. Her mind went numb as the reality set in. She couldn't understand. She didn't know how to process what had just happened. The news of Naomi's tragic death spread quickly, and Rose was feeling unreal. But as the shock and sadness took over, something else lingered in her mind. The strange, unsettling feeling she had been carrying with her since the day she started praying. The dream, the cow, the truck, it all seemed too connected. Had this been a sign? Had the same truck had hit the cow in her dream now claimed Naomi? Rose couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Naomi's death than just an accident. Months later, Rose gave birth to a healthy baby boy, a miracle she had prayed for. The years of pain and loss were now behind her. She held her baby with tears of joy, knowing that all her struggles had led her to this moment. To celebrate, Rose hosted a grand party, surrounded by family and friends. It was a day full of happiness, marking the end of a long journey and the start of a new chapter in her life. Rose's journey shows the power of prayer and faith in overcoming even the hardest trials. No matter the obstacles, prayer can be a source of strength. But remember, jealousy and envy like that of Naomi only lead to destruction. True peace comes from faith and a heart free from bitterness. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave a comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Stay faithful and I'll see you in the next video.